The first presentation of the evening is from Mamasi Architects, and if you recall, back in May, members of the Mamasi Architect Group came in, they presented to us some of the state of our buildings, some of their initial look and feedback on our buildings. We asked that they come and follow up that initial presentation, and then we're delighted to have them here this evening. So I will turn the podium over to Mamasi. Daryl and Tina are here, and Daryl, Tina, welcome. You can begin at any point.
Okay. Sorry, just give me a second. We're trying to figure out if I can see from here. You can't see
This one here?
That's a little better. Let me see if I can. No, I think I can figure this out. Okay. Sorry.
You want my computer? You want my laptop?
No, because it's fine. I'll make it work. I'll just figure it out for next time. Sorry. Good evening. The last time we were here, we talked a little bit about where we were in the process and about looking through all the schools and determining what a lot of the needs were through each school. Tonight, we are going to move on to looking at some enrollment projections and how they affect classroom counts. And we're going to focus mostly on Mahansick and Brookside tonight. So I'm not sure if you can read this, but yeah, great. So this is a chart that shows the number of students per grade at the elementary schools. It gives you the actual enrollment based on a demographic study that was done. And it's tied to SED's number of students per classroom guidelines. And then also shows Yorktown's maximum class size guidelines. And this is helpful because what you'll see is that the actual enrollment, if we look at K through 3, is 1,028 students. 4 and 5 is 501. And then the next column over shows that correlates to 45 justifiable classrooms for K through 3 and 19 classrooms for grades 4 and 5. And the reason we look at this is because it helps us understand if there is a need for classrooms, how many classrooms the state is going to aid based on their regulations. So I think it's interesting to see that your actual enrollment if we look at just K through 3, is at 1028. The projection that SED looks for, the State Education Department, is 5 years out for elementary schools. So that brings us to year 2027. Enrollment increases between K and grades 3 to 1043, which doesn't actually correlate to much of a change in classrooms. So you'll see at 1028, the classroom count is 45, because we always round up. In year 2027, it's at 46. And then taking into some of the housing projects that the district thinks are going to move forward, the numbers change again. But the way that those were provided to us were from grades K through 5. So you can see that those numbers range from 1620 to potentially 1646, so 1,646. But again, the change in classrooms is not as significant. So I'm going to move on and we'll talk about why why I'm bringing this up. So what you can see is that at Brookside, there are 22 existing classrooms, and SED will allow 24. At Mahansick, there are 24, and SED would allow 22. So your classroom counts are kind of where they need to be. But what you'll see is that the issue is that many of these classrooms have been broken up to provide small spaces within them to support students, which is taking away from the general classroom size. And some of the classrooms have been completely broken up to provide, again, student support spaces. So we'll start with Mahansick. This is just showing the overall, an overview of the site. And the last time that we talked a lot about the limitations at Mahansick. And just to recap, many of the limitations are really focused around the lack of small group instruction, the lack of small group instruction to support student support services, so things like ENL, AIS, speech, reading, an art program that doesn't have a dedicated space. There are some constraints with the library and the eSteam. There are some special education classrooms that are combining K and 1 where they really need two separate spaces. And one of the bigger things is that the grades are not optimally co-located. So what you'll see is when we get to the next slide is that you have K classrooms kind of dispersed across the school, first grade classrooms and second grade classrooms, and mostly it's a result of trying to utilize the space that you have. This diagram also shows that some of these small group instruction spaces that I've mentioned a couple times already are being delivered in hallways or in not optimal locations because they're really the only locations that are available. So this, hopefully the colors are clear for you all. This is the floor plan at Mohansick, and it's diagrammed so that you can kind of quickly understand the existing use floor plan. So the program is calling out kindergarten as one color, first grade, second grade, and third grade. So 4 different colors representing the grades. Special education as a blue, student services as a different shade. Essentials are things like art rooms, cafeteria, gymnasium, spaces that all students utilize at some time throughout the day, and in some cases community or administrative use. And so I think what you can see in this diagram is that you see on the building is, for most of you I assume know, it's a 2-story building, a bar on the left side, and then a single-story building on the right side, which is where the entrance is. The entrance is flanked by the library. To the right of the library, you'll see there are 3 kindergarten classrooms, and then the other 3 kindergarten classrooms are on the lower level of the bar, on the complete opposite side of the building. And again, I think in this case, the library, I believe, had been another kindergarten classroom, but was renovated to create a library space. So some of the things that are missing at Mohansick are there's a special education classroom that is needed. There is an additional ENL classroom, a speech room, 2 AIS classrooms, resource, and a science and music classroom. So as we move to try to solve some of these issues, our approach is that we are looking to create some of these smaller student support spaces in existing classrooms and then rebuild those classrooms to support general instruction. One of the other things that Yorktown does is that they have co-teaching, co-integrated teaching classrooms, and which is a general instruction classroom, but there are students in there who are pulled out for services during the class. And ideally, that space should be located adjacent to or within with some separation so that it's not a huge disruption when kids are being taken out. So we've also looked at ways to create those spaces that are either shared between classes or certainly integrated in a location that makes sense. So in this diagram, you'll see that to make up the counts, we have relocated a number of spaces, including 12 to 1 to 2 special education classrooms, 8 to 1 to 2 special education classrooms. And that's also because those classrooms really should be a certain size, and in some cases we're below those sizes, and in some cases we're above those sizes. So this particular concept looks at building essentially an 8 classroom addition on the far end of the building, which you can see at the back of the bar, to allow us to kind of create these zones of classrooms. So K would be located in one area, then you would have a series of special education and student support services sort of centrally located between all the grades. And you can see that grades 1, 2, and 3 are on the opposite sides of the building. So the addition would take, would be for grade K at one end and grade 2 at the above, again, with all the student services between. I think you can see that there's a sort of a congregation of some of the darker blue, and that's to keep the services in a location that really can support the instructional classrooms. And then all the purple is kind of on one end, closer to the spaces that are, again, are louder and used more often, and students are already frequenting that space. So those are the library and STEAM room, science, music, art, and the existing cafeteria and gym. Any questions? Should I just go on? Okay. So the next slide shows you what that addition would look like on the site. So you can see it's called out as an 8-classroom addition at the back of the building. This would obviously create the need to relocate the playground that is there, but it is probably one of the easiest places to construct, and it's a very clean connection to the existing classroom wing, and seems to solve all the space issues. We also looked at another concept for Mohansick, which relocates fewer spaces, but breaks up several additions. And you can see in this case, there is a 2-classroom addition at the back of the building. And in this case, we'll look at the lower level. There's a grade 1 ICT, so the space between the grade 1 and the 8 to 1 to 1 is that integrated pull-out space. This allows for all of grade 1 to be together. On the opposite side of that floor, grade 2. On the main level, it's grade 3 at the addition, again with a 12 to 1 to 1 occupying the other classroom, and the ICTs with sports space. And then the essentials in this case, science, art, music, are kind of wrapped around this back area looking out towards the back of the building. So K in this option remains where several of the classrooms already are, and builds an addition at the front of the building to allow for all of K to be in that zone, allowing them to use a separate entrance as well. In order to make this one work, it means reoccupying the library as 2 K classrooms and building a smaller library, not a small library, a library at the sort of tucked between the gym and some of the newer spaces that are relocated, art and music, and then also renovating the spaces in front of it to create a larger library and STEAM area. And also with the potential of some outdoor classroom, because it's kind of tucked away in a zone that might allow that to kind of create a landscaped out, like a music, art, library, science, sort of STEAM type center, outdoor space center. And there's 1 K classroom addition to make the 6 classrooms work in the far right-hand corner of the building. The auditorium, the gym all stay in the same zone. Most of the special services are kind of centralized at the main level on the lower end of the bar, which is where many of them are already. And if we look at the diagram in this, you'll see that there's 4 classroom addition at the back bar, a small library addition that connects the gym and the bar, and then a 1 classroom addition at the front of the building, which is very close to one of the existing playgrounds, so that would be something that we would need to study a little bit further. So we will move on to Brookside. Brookside had a lot of both Brookside and Mahansick have many, they're very similar in terms of the needs, as we discussed at the last board meeting. A lack of pull-out spaces, dedicated student support spaces, instructional, small group instruction, and related services, in this case, not being co-located. If I go to the next slide, which is the existing floor plan, you'll see that that clearly sort of distributed where, again, K is kind of dispersed throughout one of the far left-hand side of the building. Grades 2 and 3 are on the right-hand side of the building. Many of the core spaces are at the center, where this building kind of shoots back to a back wing, which is really broken up with both essential spaces and student support services. So if we look at one of the ways to solve some of the issues at Brookside, it is building a two-story addition, K addition, at the back left-hand corner of the building. It's 2 classrooms with two support spaces in that block. That allows us to get all 6 K classrooms in one zone, which have bathrooms already, and to utilize all of the pull-out spaces in those classrooms. It distributes first grade in the bar adjacent to kindergarten, and then a series of student support spaces close to the main office and to the entrance. To get the counts for second and third grade, we would look at building a 5 classroom addition. So it's a total of 7 classroom size spaces. One of the 5 is to allow for the ICT, the integrated co-teaching space, with some student support space, so that 2 grade 3s can share that space. And also a 12-to-1-to-2 classroom. In this case, at the front of the building are things like an interventionist, the psychologist, counseling, a sensory space, and at the back of the building, you'll see there's OT-PT, reading, speech, and some of those services that are often grouped together. If I go on to the next slide, it shows what that addition, where that's located and how it interacts with the site. In this case, it does shoot out a bit further, I think, than we had hoped, so we looked at another option that changes the shape of the addition and allows all for grade 3 to be located in one zone, grade 2 to be located in one zone, and grades 1, kindergarten and first grade, to do the same. Organized a little bit differently, but the classrooms all sort of have a zone in this option. We've also looked at keeping all the essentials which is all the purple, kind of contiguous, so science and art, STEAM and library and music are all together. If you walk down the hallway further, you reach OT-PT and some of the student support spaces. If you shoot back to the front of the building, you pass through the gym, the corridor between the gym and the auditorium again. And you can see some of the relocated spaces in this option as well. Again, they're very similar. If we go to the next slide, you'll see that this option, how this one lays out on the site. There's a connecting corridor to the back bar for the 6 classroom addition, and again, in this case, a 2 grade kindergarten addition at the back left side of the building. So in each case, there is some reworking of site that would have to occur in order to make these, to construct these additions. But I think in all cases, they're certainly doable. So that is where we are right now. We are about to move on to looking more closely at the middle school and the high school, and also at Crom Pond. And we're, as we kind of go through each school, we're better understanding the organization of the schools and the needs to begin to come up with solutions for each one of them.
Well, thank you for that. That was helpful to see. And also what I'll share is we sent a survey to our school community soliciting their feedback on priorities as we begin to plan next steps for our school district. What I will share is the survey went out Friday afternoon at about 5 p.m. We're now Monday evening. So about 3 days later, we're at almost 500 responses from the community. So there's great interest in the community around this project. There are many considerations, and we'll share the results of the survey with you because I think it'll be helpful in your planning as you present additional options and refine the options that you present to the board. So I'll certainly share that, and we can incorporate that in our steering committee meetings as well.
Okay. Thank you. This is really comprehensive, and it gives us a really, really good starting point. I'm going to open up, see if the board has any questions. I'll start down with Cheryl.
Yeah. Ron, just a reminder, when are the surveys due?
Surveys are due on Friday, June 23rd, by the close of business on Friday the 23rd.
Great, thank you. Yes, I have a question. As we go through the planning, what type of flexibility is built in so that if we have needs needs that are required in the future, how can we change our plans, like within the classrooms? If they're designated for one thing now, or is it easy to change to another type of classroom or learning center in the future?
Yes. I mean, I think as the schools have done in the past, you know, they have relocated classrooms or reallocated one grade to another grade. So that option is always there. You know, we're trying to seek the best organization, at least to start off with. And as numbers change, there is flexibility in, you know, shifting one grade one to one location versus another location. The additions are really to make up for, the classroom additions are really to make up for taking a classroom and kind of breaking it down for those other small spaces. So there's always the option of removing walls, but obviously the goal is to not be doing that contiguously.
Thank you.
Rashmi?
I had a question on the enrollment projections. I know we had a presentation by BOCES. Was it at the last meeting? Yeah, the meeting before. Do these numbers reconcile, or we're kind of using that number to come up with the proposed maps?
Yes, great question. Those numbers, the numbers that the Mamasi group used in their projections were from the Western Suffolk BOCES study, so those correlate.
Perfect, thank you.
Mike? Catalina?
I'm good.
So our next steps, or I know Mamasi, I guess one of the reasons we're having them present now is this is our last meeting of the year. So we need to continue our work during the summer. So we just wanted the community to know where we were standing, and by the time we get to September, significant work will have been done, and we didn't want people to think we were doing this in a vacuum.
Of course, and I'm sure we'll continue to keep the community updated over the summer. One of the things that I'd be remiss if I didn't add during the survey and looking at the results, and I'll be sure to share that with our steering committee so that the steering committee has the access to the feedback that we receive from the community. There are questions about French Hill, and can you use French Hill, and there's talk about Mohansick, and there's talk about Brookside, but can we speak to French Hill? And we will, and we have. And some of the limitations of French Hill is that it's been a building that's been closed for over a dozen years at this point. And as we've made technology infrastructure upgrades, as we've made facility upgrades, security upgrades, and classroom upgrades, those same upgrades have not been made at French Hill. So to bring French Hill up to a school-ready condition, based on the estimates that we've been provided, or the discussions that we've had, I should say, those numbers of new construction on our elementary schools and renovating French Hill would be quite comparable. However, with French Hill, there are annual recurring expenses that are associated with reopening any school building. As you reopen a school building, we're looking at administrative staff, we're looking at clinical staff, faculty, office staff, technology staff, custodial staff, cleaners, security staff. There are so many recurring costs that you would incur with opening a school building that you wouldn't incur with adding on or renovating an operating school building. So I appreciate and I really thank the community for their interest, their attention to detail on some of the observations and questions that they had. And that's part of the calculus with regard to looking at modest additions on Brookside and Mohansick and some of the just challenges financially, especially in a tax cap environment with reopening an idled school building that's been idled for over a dozen years.
So I'm actually really excited. These floor plans, you've done more than I thought that we could do with those buildings because we just see these blocks. So I'm really excited about the reorganization. I like the way you think about this stuff. So I'm excited to see what this summer gives. Ron, have we made sure that this survey is going out to the entire community, not just the school community? How are we accessing the people who live in town without students in their buildings?
Yep, so we're trying to get it on as many media outlets as we can. We do have a very robust listserv. We'll certainly work to spread the message far and wide. And just in looking at the data that we have from the 476 people who have submitted to date, there is a fair number of individuals who do not have children in the district who have responded to the survey.
Okay. All right, good. So next steps are we continue to work through the summer. Are we in touch with our financial advisory group to understand what we can, how will that work? As additions and renovations and it's a whole, yeah.
Yeah, you start.
Yes, so we're in contact with Bernard P. Donegan, they're our fiscal advisors. They need just a little more information to be able to give us the best projections that they can. They've given us some preliminary numbers, so we do have some idea, but they will need the work of the architects to be a little further along so they can solidify their numbers. But we, again, plan on having that around the September timeframe.
If I can just add to that, in the letter that I sent out to the community, one of the goals of this work is to make this a tax-neutral project. So Lisa and her team will be working very closely with our fiscal advisors, Bernard P. Donegan, to achieve that goal. I do believe that there is a pathway toward achieving that goal. And the one resounding piece of feedback that I've taken away from the survey results thus far is that we have about 88% of, or 87%, 86%, I think it is, 86% of our community who responded thus far believe it's essential or very important that the district continuously upgrades and improves and maintains existing facilities. There is a strong commitment, as evidenced by the results of the survey thus far. We're not even a week in, but there is a strong commitment from our community to supporting this work, and that's exciting, and I look forward to bringing all the parties together. There is certainly an interest in this being tax neutral from our community. That certainly resonated with the community, and we'll work with our fiscal advisors to find that pathway forward.
So we will you're going to start working on Crampond and the middle school, and then I guess we have the high school as well to work on?
Yeah, there's some fewer spaces at the high school, but yes, there are some.
Okay,
some needs.
all right. So we're going to continue to work through the summer, correct, Ron? And then we'll be presenting back in September where we are again?
We sure will. We'll continue to work through the summer to continue to refine plans and make sure that we're putting forward the best possible thinking to our school community.
Okay. Thank you so very much. We appreciate it. Sorry for the late night.
No, that's-
Thank you.
Thanks.